Am I the a-hole stories? Am I the a-hole for telling my dad, either you pay me a proper wage or I'll quit? My dad owns a restaurant and intends to leave it to one of his kids. My sister, who is 28, was not interested and went to be a hairdresser, and my brother, who is 29, is in uni. Meanwhile I am 25, went to cook school, or whatever you call it in English, and graduated 2 years ago. I love to cook, I love to experiment, I love working in the restaurant business despite the hours being freaking horrid, so I have been designated as the heir, more or less. Despite everything going on, the restaurant runs great and frankly, I take full credit for it. Ever since I took over as head chef, revamped the menu, created a system for people to order and pick up food and so on, the number of customers has tripled. We actually make more during this crisis, even without allowing dine-in customers, than my dad made before I worked here full-time. Atop that, I also often work when someone falls through, be it kitchen work, serving, hosting, whatever. I manage most of the accounting, and I also started a social media presence for the restaurant, which has blown up locally. Long story short, I work a minimum of 60 hours a week, often more. Now I do all of this with love, I like it, despite swallowing up all my time, but that brings us to what I make. I literally make as much as the serving staff, who are all under 20, would make if they worked full-time. That is to say, I make what they would make in 40 hours while working 60+ hours and having triple the workload, and I am tired of it. I tried speaking to my dad about it, but I kept getting inconclusive answers or BS answers. As an example, he talks about it being a difficult time for restaurants, so can't increase my wage despite the fact we make more despite the crisis, or crap like, I'll think about it. I can barely pay my goddamn rent at this rate, let alone save even a dime. So I ended up saying what's in the title, I could get another job like yesterday, extreme shortage of chefs, and make at least double what I make right now starting out. Obviously, this led to my dad and family blowing up at me, and now I am worried if I am the a-hole. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Sounds like your dad is just using you for cheap labor. Sure feels like it. It is. It's also illegal and bad practice. Take a week off for your mental health. Let him run things and watch it implode without you. Return and insist of a pay raise and appropriate salary structure, or you walk. You have proof you are an excellent head chef and manager. I imagine if you walk, so will most of the staff, and your dad can't afford that. It's a trump card, but you need to pull it now, before you burn out and can't do this anymore. As someone who's working in a family business, leave. They do not appreciate you, and will not. Get yourself a better paying restaurant job. With your experience it should be no problem. And when the time comes to take over, they will insist you buy it from them. Which you won't be able to do since they underpay you. When you can, they will sell to somebody else for a greatly inflated price due to all your hard work and screw you over. Like I said, either I get paid properly or I am out. Exactly. I'm glad you know your worth. It took me 3 years to know mine. I am leaving my job this weekend because of how I get paid currently. Tell me your story. I work for a small business that's owned by my friend's mom and stepfather. It's a medical job that requires knowledge of the field, which I had none, but they hired me anyway because I'm a quick learner. The average starting pay for this field is $20, $22 an hour, and I was only getting paid $10 in the beginning, which was fine because I wasn't certified. I was blinded by their fake kindness in the beginning, but then I started to notice certain things. 1. They had 8 employees in 2017 and made $500,000 for the year. 4 of us were getting paid less than $15. 2. No health benefits until 2 years ago. 3. The promise of a bonus, but then, instead of investing in the employees, they bought new windows for their house with that money, which is fine. You can do whatever you want with your money, but don't promise us bonuses if you're not going to follow through. 4. My first huge issue that almost made me quit. I was hired May 2017 and another coworker, a man, was hired June 2018, a year later. I found out last November that my boss was paying him 0.75 cents more than me, so I had a conversation with her about it and she gave me a raise. Then I found out of April this year that she gave him another raise, and this time it was a whole $1 more than what I was making. I said nothing. Then in July they pulled me aside and gave me a raise, and it was still less than him, and gave another male coworker a raise as well. That coworker was hired a year and a half after I was, and was making the same as me. So, I decided it was time for me to move on, because they can pay us whatever they like, but I'm allowed to not like it and leave. So, I told them yesterday I was leaving the company this Saturday, and that they're lucky I gave them a notice at all. There are more reasons why I quit, mostly to do with the PPP loan that was given during the pandemic, but that's too much to write. I should clarify that I am a woman, and I'd like to think this wasn't sexist, but it sure feels that way. Now for the second story. Update: am I the a-hole for telling my old boss, I don't believe in loyalty and it's unreasonable to expect me not to quit for a better paid job? Original story. Worked at my first job for 6 years. They trained me from ground zero on everything. I had a great boss, fought for my promotions, etc. In those 6 years my salary doubled. Got an offer from a more prestigious company with better growth opportunities and double the salary. We're talking substantial money, 120K versus 250K. I quit without thinking twice, and thought it was more respectful not to ask my old boss to use any of his political capital to get me a match. He couldn't. Part of my new comp is stock in the new company, and the salary is likely more than his pay. So, I simply gave him my notice and explained my transition plan. Boss was truly devastated, and very angry. We both stayed professional throughout the discussion, but it got heated and he questioned my loyalty as if it's a character flaw. I said my view is I paid him and the company back with my hard work, so we're at the very least even. Arguably they got a bargain deal because I could have jumped ship for more money 2 years ago. Didn't say this last sentence out loud. Should I have handled any of this differently? My wife and some friends say I'm being rather cold and calculating. I should have shown more loyalty since the company gave me so much. I think it's disrespectful to assume I didn't give them anything less than enough in return. I know my worth and my contribution to the company's bottom line. I've seen people walked out of the door after 2 decades with a pink slip, and no one shed a tear the morning after. I respect my old boss, but what the hell is loyalty to your job supposed to even mean? Edit. I can't possibly respond to everyone and read every comment, so if there's something super pressing you wanted to ask or share, feel free to DM and I may be able to answer. Thanks for the engagement and helpful insight, everyone. Now for the top comments before we read the update. Not the a-hole. I was ready to say you're an a-hole and give you the whole fine line between honesty and rudeness talk, but to be honest, I see absolutely nothing wrong with your course of action. You worked there. Did your thing. Got a better offer. Let the boss know. When the boss asked why, you explained it to him. There isn't much reason for him to be mad except he got frustrated that you have more than 2 brain cells. Loyalty to the company doesn't mean you should turn down good career opportunities. It means not spreading company secrets, or talking crap about your workplace and stuff. Company loyalty is a one-way street. Your employer only cares about it as long as it benefits them. In 99% of professional jobs, no company would hold your hand and sacrifice for the employee if they were struggling and hurting the team. It's basically just yet another way capital owners to try to keep workers from making things difficult for them. Loyalty to your employer in our modern economy sounds like such a futile idea. Growing up, my dad worked for a pretty big company for about 20 years, but he got sick when I was in high school and was put on permanent disability. He passed about 15 years later, and when going through his affairs, I couldn't find his life insurance policy. I called HR at his previous company to see if it was possibly the same policy he had when he worked there. Turns out, it was because the company continued to pay for all of his insurance benefits and a few other things, even though he hadn't worked there in almost 15 years. A couple hours later, I got a call back from the CEO expressing his condolences. Apparently, he called my dad a few times a year to check on him. Not only that, he knew where I went to college, that I was a teacher, my husband's name, and that I was living out of state. This man had thousands of employees, and yet he was so good to my dad, a man who hadn't worked for his company in 15 years. He and his company are definitely part of that other 1%. Not the a-hole. I've seen people walked out of the door after 2 decades with a pink slip. Yeah, and your boss would have happily done this with you as well. You're talking about more than doubling your salary, and you usually only get that type of bump when you switch employers. My take is, if they wanted to keep you, they should have kept your salary competitive the whole time. I hope you did your due diligence though. More money doesn't make it a better place to work. Thanks. In all fairness, I know for a fact my old boss would have fought for me, but agree, if it was between him and me, for example, I'm the one walking out the door. So, I take the same approach. I'll put my family and our financial stability over him every day. The opportunity was too good to pass on either way. I'm fortunate to mostly like my new team, but I was offered a job with a FANG of my profession, so even if I need to be absolutely miserable here for 2 years and then jump ship, it's worth it to pad the resume. Don't think I'll need to do the jump though. I'm actually in the FANG industry, and I don't think you could pay me enough to work at any of those places. I find this to be a big generational divide between people my age from Eastern Europe and the US. Younger and ambitious Americans are much more focused on finding a fulfilling career. Ambitious Russians are much more focused on job security. In my example, I don't mind grinding for a few years at the cost of my social life, if it means better career prospects afterwards, some stock comp and a maxed out 401k. That being said, I have absolutely no issue with the approach Americans take. Makes for a better workplace for all of us when people don't tolerate BS. And now for the update, probably a bit mundane, but some folks wanted an update. Took my old boss out for a beer, To not burn that bridge as some of you have suggested, we sat in an outside pub garden for all the health-conscious Redditors. Both had a great time. A couple months helped us cool off, and getting together turned into a lot of reminiscing about the good old times together. It also got us talking even more frankly about the things that would be viewed too political if we were still employed by the same company. I think I may have kept my mentor in my life after all. I apologized for perhaps sending things with my old job too abruptly. He said I couldn't have left at a worse time, but then again there was no better or worse time to lose me, and to not sweat it. Said he understands why I took the job, respects my reasoning for trying to protect him from using up the goodwill he built to save me as an employee/get me a match, and that giving him an earlier heads up might have given him more time to find a replacement, but didn't make a huge difference at the end of the day. It's all water under the bridge now. The company already hired my replacement for about 25% more than I was paid. He didn't disclose the exact amount, but that was the implication. He was blunt, I wouldn't have gotten that much even with the offer I had. He also said his priorities in life are very different, and he's happy where he is due to personal reasons and work-life perks, but that I need to seek what is the right answer for me. Said he'd be happy to work with me again if an opportunity presents itself, and I echo that sentiment. Who knows, we may end up on the same team one way or another. A few things I took away from the Reddit discussion and our talk with the old boss. Look out for yourself. Your company is not the same thing as your boss. There are structural obstacles to fight against, and just because you're loyal to one person doesn't mean the company as a whole feels that way about you. I don't regret my choice. Be good to people who were good to you and do right by them, if that doesn't go against number one. I wasn't a dick in my final interview and thanked my old boss profusely. It made a difference, but obviously he was still upset in the moment. Which leads me to number 3. People are people. They are imperfect and have lapses of judgment. If you see them as such, you will find it easier to move on and move up in your professional life. Good luck you all, and thanks again for your input. Sometimes consulting Reddit does put a good spin on a trivial story. Now for the final comments. Thank you for updating. I'm glad everything worked out for you. Thanks. It is good indeed. It's nice to see a positive update where communication has helped resolve something. So, I missed your first post, but would have said the same thing. I started a poorly paid job from someone I'd considered a mentor. Worked hard in 3 years, doubled my salary, not much though. But got an offer for a 20% raise and had to take it. They told me I needed to come ASAP, but I said, listen, I can't just up and quit, I have to give my old boss time. The partner in the firm who was in the meeting, said that it's best thing you could say, I hope you treat us the same way if it ever comes to that. 4 years later it did come to that. I moved but gave 6 months notice. Still have a great relationship with boss at company 1 and everyone at company 2. Same here. Every time I stop by an old job of mine, I get a job offer or a coming back yet? LOL. Why do employers hire replacements and pay them way more than the original employee? That just makes no sense. Bluntly put, 2 different policies, retention raises and talent acquisition budget. For the retention pool of cash, HR will fight harder not to give people already hired a higher raise. There's an understanding, justified one by the way, that people will be happier with less/won't leave if they are already employed. For talent acquisition, the market dictates the salary. People ask for a premium to take on the risk of changing jobs. Thus, the company has no choice but to pay it or go without an employee. And that's it for this video guys. If you have thoughts to share, leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you like this content. Turn the notification on to get updated on my latest posts. I'll catch you in the next one. Good day everyone.